Hello, and welcome to episode 36 of the Mo Money Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Morehouse. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited to talk to my next guest. Many of you may already know him if you're familiar with the Canadian personal finance blogging world. His name is Robb Engen. He is one half of Boomer and Echo. He writes that blog with his mom, which is super awesome. And he also writes for the Toronto Star. He's a public speaker. And he is just the nicest guy. I'll just say that right now. He's like the nicest guy. And so he actually spoke at the Canadian Personal Finance Conference this past fall. And I really enjoyed his talk all about how he kind of developed his blog as kind of just a hobby and then just, hustled and made it into a side business so he can help to better provide for his family. And so we'll get into all of that and more right now. Thanks, Rob, for joining me on the program today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So the reason I wanted you on the show is because I really, really enjoyed your talk at the Canadian Personal Finance Conference. And so I definitely wanted to chat with you more just about how you got into personal finance and how, you've you started your blog and now that's kind of becoming a business and so on. So we'll get into all of that. But I want to start from the beginning and ask you how this all started for you.
Good question. I found myself, I changed jobs around age 30. A lot was going on in my life. I just had a baby and changed careers. I was in the hospitality industry for 10 years and I moved to work in the public sector for a university.
Yeah, those are very different industries.
For sure. And I was traveling a lot and working maybe 60, 65 hours a week. And so, of course, with our first baby, I wanted to scale that back and found the opportunity to work at a university. But I found the pace was a lot slower than what I was used to. And, I'm done at 4:30 and come home. And I was lucky. We had a really good baby who went to bed at 7 o'clock and slept for 12 hours. So I don't tell too many people that because they get a lot of death stares. But
yeah.
So, I found, we're kind of stuck at home and I found myself kind of surfing through I was interested in personal finance and found myself surfing through a lot of blogs and was reading, $1 Million Journey and Money Smart's blog and Canadian Finance blog. And so some of the kind of the pioneers in the Canadian personal finance space. And, I was pouring through the archives of $1 Million Journey, and I just remember thinking to myself, like, I could be writing this instead of just sitting here reading it. And I was talking to my mom, and my mom and I had a great relationship, and she kind of got me started on a lot of money matters. And she was an advisor for many years at TD Bank, and I had the Green Machine piggy bank and all kinds of things. So I was always talking to my mom about personal finance, and much to the chagrin of the rest of our family, it was kind of our little fun thing that we would talk about, and it's boring for everybody else. Yeah. So us PF bloggers just kind of get that, but
yeah, totally. Yeah, we're the only ones that think this is really cool, where everyone else is like, it's pretty nerdy.
Yeah, exactly. So I got to talking and kind of suggested maybe we could start our own blog and kind of tackle it from the Boomer and Echo generation. I have to credit my mom for coming up with that.
Great name.
And so we just kind of started writing and had no idea what to expect, and so we've kind of evolved with the times. It's been over 5 years, and
wow.
It's been quite the journey.
How do you? I'm curious because I find as a blogger, I've been doing this for a couple of years now, and I find just me being the sole owner of my blog, it's hard to kind of have a schedule and keep posts flowing and everything like that. How do you do that with your mom, and how do you make sure you have it all organized? It seems like it almost be a little bit more complicated having a blog with two people involved.
Well, I've always I've heard it from both sides. I've heard you should always schedule your posts and have a set schedule that your readers can expect something. And then I've heard, well, no, you should only blog when you have something to say. And so I found that we stuck to a schedule right off the bat. And so when we first started out, I wrote on Monday, my mom wrote on Tuesday, I wrote on Wednesday, my mom wrote on Thursday, and then I do like a roundup on Friday.
Wow, that's a lot, actually.
And we stuck to that, and so maybe we had a lot to say in the beginning, and so I think for 2 years we stuck to that schedule. And it just
Wow.
became like habit. I just know, on Sunday I'd write a post for Monday, and I never really worked that far ahead, but I just know in my routine that's what I needed to do. And I think our readers kind of came to expect that. And, they'd always, while some of the older personal finance blogs might have been dying off or slowing down, we kind of just kept it up. And so I think we were able to gain quite a few readers because of that. And it's just helped in our own planning, just knowing that, a post is due today. Where, I have another blog, which is the Rewards Cards Canada blog, where I do write just when I have something to say. And I just wrote something yesterday, and that was the first time I published since like October 8th or something like that. So, you can kind of get stuck or lose track of that blog, I guess. And I think it's harder to build a following that way. Whereas others can probably get away with that. Whereas this one is a little more, the blog is a little more factual based and that sort of thing. So I don't know. I struggle to find, a consistent rhythm in that, with that one. But with Boomer and Echo, we just stuck to a schedule from day one, and it seems to have worked.
Yeah. Wow. That's an ambitious schedule. Props to you.
Well, after 2 years, that kind of died off. And
Still
and
2 years. Damn.
Yeah, that was that was pretty good. But now we're down to like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So
Seems like a good.
Still keep it consistent.
Definitely. So I guess when you started the blog initially, was it mainly just to have an outlet to kind of express some of the things that you were interested in and some of the things that you were learning? Or did you always kind of have an idea that, maybe this could be a business venture down the road?
Like I said, when we started, we didn't really know what we were doing. I did have an idea that you could make money blogging. You're just reading through the $1 million journeys and Money Smarts blogs. You see the ads maybe at that time because I was a web virgin, I guess, or I didn't really understand what it all meant. But you can kind of, as you're reading, you can kind of start to piece it together. And, these ads are AdSense and these ads look like they're, display ads and that kind of thing. And so, I kind of figured once you get a following, you could probably make some money. But, literally for the first 6 months, we, just wrote 4 or 5 days a week and for nothing.
Yeah.
And, so I think we just started out kind of, we had something to say about money. And certainly, like I said, my mom and I had those conversations offline, and bored everybody else when we got started on those topics. And so this was like our outlet for sharing those ideas online and kind of moving that conversation online, which I thought was a lot of fun. And because I was going through a lot in my life, we just had a baby and my wife went on maternity leave, and then we were having discussions about, her staying at home full time and could we make that work, and just paid off a bunch of debt, a bunch of student debt, and combined our finances. So, there's just so much going on that there was a lot to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that reminds me of part of something you touched on during your session at the conference was how, you did make the decision for your wife to stay home while you worked, but you also wanted your blog to kind of help with that transition. Did you want to kind of expand on that?
Sure. So one thing I didn't really touch on in the presentation, it wasn't really that relevant, but one of the decisions or reasons why we decided that my wife would stay home full time is she was actually diagnosed with MS in 2008. And so, she's doing fine, but, at that time it was kind of the unknown. So that kind of sped up our process. We went from wanting to travel the world to be speeding up our decision to have kids and raise a family. And one of those decisions was to, have her hopefully stay home full time and get numbers, and we're able to make it work. But certainly the online income or the side business does help. It helps us not only make that work, but also get ahead, because that's what one of our goals is to retire or have me retire earlier, and we grow accustomed to a certain lifestyle and things like that. So we didn't want to do it as just we just didn't want to just scrape by.
Absolutely.
We needed to make it work for the two of us and our lifestyle. So
absolutely. Is that I'm curious because one of the things that you're pursuing now is a fee-only advisor, and is that when did that kind of come about in your mind that you didn't want to just generate, have your blog as a business, but kind of do another element as a financial advisor?
Well,
top
again,
of that?
kind of by the seat of my pants. It was we get a lot of emails from readers that you write an article and it's kind of like it's either your experience or it's your opinion on a certain subject, and then you'll get an email saying, "Well, what about me? Here's my situation." And I find like it's so hard to offer some really solid advice in that situation because you don't know all their details, or what kind of situation they're in. So you can't just say, well, I would do this. It's not like I call it the Redditors who, there's only one way to do things and it's this way. And you're an idiot if you don't. There's a lot more nuance and other details that might be missing, right? So I was actually talking with, it was at the Personal Finance Conference 2 years ago, talking to Sandy Martin, who runs Spring Personal Finance, and she left the banking world, started her own fee-only practice, and so just got to talking with her about her experience starting that up, and she was the one that actually really pushed me into starting it and offering that as a service for those readers who have maybe more than that kind of that one question, but want to take a whole look at their financial situation and really come up with a plan that's it's not going to be a financial advisor at a bank who's steering you towards their products. It's going to be someone who is unbiased, doesn't work for someone who's going to sell you products, but can give you kind of an unbiased look at your finances. And so that's where that came from. And we really just started it. Obviously, my mom working in the bank was used to that, at least that process of giving financial advice. But, that kind of came from just a let's try this and see. And so far so good. I mean, I have nothing, when you hear back from clients who say, I wish I would have done this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that really gives you a good feeling like you're really helping and making a difference. So, that's exciting. And
absolutely.
Maybe leads to a new career down the road.
Definitely. I think that's really exciting. And as you know, I think the first time, or maybe one of the first times you've commented on my blog was when I posted a blog post about how I'm thinking about doing some money coaching down the road. And you're like, oh, I'm actually kind of doing the same thing. I'm like, very cool. So what I'm curious, because I know you're taking some courses to get your CFP designation, has what you've been learning in those courses kind of changed your perspective on personal finance, or I don't know. I'm just curious what your thoughts on that are.
Well, the CP, or the path to your certification, it really it opens your eyes to see there's so much more to financial planning than picking your investments and your day-to-day kind of finance. There's so much more in terms of your the risk management, so your insurance needs and estate planning and things like that, and realizing that I'm getting inquiries from not just people who are in their 20s and 30s, but people who are in their 50s and 60s, and they have much different needs than
absolutely totally different ball game
than I do. And so right now we kind of deal with that by a typical scenario is like my mom will handle the 50 to 60 year olds and I'll handle the 20 to 30 year olds, and then whoever's in between is up for grabs, I guess. But, depending on their needs, but it's certainly going through that process. It opens your eyes to there's a vast world or wealth of knowledge out there about certain things, and you can see it by the types of clients that everyone's unique, right? You can't make if people want to get into financial planning and think there's just a cookie cutter financial plan I can give to everybody and this will work. It's not the case. I mean, everyone is unique, and so I'm finding there's all these different scenarios that people are up against, and whether someone's divorced or whether someone's leaving a job and has a locked-in retirement account there, and all these different things, and you have to kind of know the answers and know how to get them and navigate your way around them to offer the best recommendations.
Absolutely, and it's funny that you mentioned that, just because I've been thinking a lot lately just about how over the years, as you get older, you kind of become wiser and realize things that are like, oh, obviously that's so obvious now. But I was just looking at the budget spreadsheet that I just use for my, personal finances. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, I'm like, if I were to, offer this to someone, would it actually work for someone? I'm like, I think there's kind of no, then I started kind of looking at what other budget spreadsheets are online that you can look at. And there's so many different ones. And it kind of freaked me out because I'm one of those people that sometimes a bit black and white. I'm like, no, there's a right and a wrong. But then I was just thinking, I'm like, I don't think when it comes to personal finance, there's kind of no wrong answer. And there's like a million different ways you can do the same thing.
Right.
For instance, just for like budgeting, I'm like, I may budget one way that works for me, but, depending on your scenario, you're divorced, you're single, you're married, you have kids. I mean,
or the way
how
your
you
paycheck
budget
comes in, right? I mean,
exactly.
At the university I work, we get paid once a month at the end of the month. Is that
right? Oh,
and
that's
there's other
different.
places that work, and I hear from people that say, oh, how do you manage that? And that's from someone who's used to getting paid weekly or biweekly. And,
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly different.
Yeah. It also just, my husband's a freelancer, so he, never really knows when he's going to get paid. Sometimes it's a huge chunk one month, and then he has to kind of, wait it out for another month until he gets, some more invoices in. So
for sure. And different, insurance needs for freelance or self-employed people versus salaried employees. And so, yeah, I mean, so I guess as I'm, like you said, getting older and kind of learning more about finance and everyone's different scenarios. I mean, I think that's why people get so aggravated at like some of the general Globe and Mail, National, or Financial Post kind of articles where, you look at somebody's finances and just do a quick fix. Because I don't think there is one like that. You can't do it in a page.
No. Exactly. I'm curious, since you do get so many questions from people, let's start with what are some of the most interesting or complex questions you've got, or just something that's kind of like always stuck in your mind?
Sometimes it's I'm sure you get lots of emails from articles that do really well, maybe in search, or that have a lot of comments on them. So one of them is about locked-in retirement.
Okay.
And so there's a couple scenarios where, okay, so if you worked somewhere for 10 years and then left, and then you contributed to a pension there, you have the option to either leave it and leave it vested with that company, and then when you retire at 60 or whatever, 65, you can withdraw a small pension from that, just like you would if you continue working there forever. And but the other option is to transfer it into a locked-in retirement account, so you could like manage it like an RSP, but don't have the ability to withdraw from it because it's there for your retirement. And so we get probably 2 or 3 comments a day on this post, plus emails all the time about financial hardship. And so there's certain rules where you can, or certain scenarios where you can access that money if you can show that you're in financial distress. And so people all the time, and you could and you can kind of sense their desperation. Like, so it's either I just got divorced or I just got laid off, and I know that there's $20,000 in here or $40,000 in here, and I need it. I need to get access to it. How can I? And so you really feel for these people. I mean, they're obviously in a really tough situation, and or maybe they're overwhelmed with debt or something like that, and they need to access this money. So probably more than anything, we get questions about that. And different provinces have different rules about how you can access it, and unfortunately, usually the answer is you can't. Which is disappointing, I guess. But
I'm curious, since you said that you kind of help, the majority of the people that you help are from 20 to 30. What are kind of some just really key things that people in that age group should know by now when it comes to their finances? You touched on the budget. I mean, most people
cringe at the budget where like we see it as personal finance bloggers and our readers probably get it, but the average person, they either have no idea what they're spending or, want to run the other way when you mention the B word or the budget. And, they need to be able to track their spending and kind of know, have a really good idea actually how they spend their money or what they spend their money on. And because how do you know how much you can save or pay down your debt or whatever if you don't know what's left over at the end of the month or why? And so that's a key one. The other one I think is if you are like one of the mistakes I made as back when I was 19 or 20, I started saving. There was no TFSAs back then. That's how old I am. But I started saving for retirement in an RSP, and there was really no reason why. I mean, I wasn't married yet. I didn't have kids. Yeah. I drove a beat up car that was on its last legs. Like there was no reason why I was saving for retirement when I should have been kind of building up some cash. So what I suggest to a lot of 20-somethings is, well, what are your short and medium term goals? Like, where are you going to be? I mean, you've moved across the country, right? And I mean, that's that it's not cheap. And,
nope.
and
it was not.
So what are your plans? There are people that, think I need to buy a house right now. Okay, well, what are your plans in the next 3 to 5 years? Because maybe locking up your money in a house is not the best use of that money. And so I just would encourage people to really understand where they spend their money and then have kind of what are your 1 to 3 year or 3 to 5 year plans or goals. Because the worst thing you could do, I think, is to lock your money away in either a house or a retirement account when you're going to need that cash for something else.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the reason why me and my husband have not bought a house is we're just like, I just don't, even though technically I think we could afford to own, maybe a condo in Toronto. I'm like, I just don't want to lock my money away because there's so many, I think, our kind of goals have shifted with, just our freelance businesses as well as this like our travel plans and just, I don't know, we kind of like the flexibility and freedom right now. So yeah. It's
absolutely, and I hope more young people think that way. Like I love those two words, flexibility and freedom. Like, why would you want to be locked down here when, especially when there, if there's some unknown or uncertainty in your future? And I'm not just saying like, you think you're going to lose your job. I just mean like, the options are open. You can move across the country and do anything. Why would you want to lock yourself down here? At least know why. Know why if you do want to.
Exactly. And you just never, especially, I mean, I'm on the cusp of 30 right now, and just looking back at the past 5 years, I'm like, I could have not predicted what could have happened. But because I think I did not lock my money kind of into, and I kind of spread it around, I had my TFSA, my RSP, and, or emergency fund, and kind of, made sure I saved in a way that was appropriate to kind of my, short-term and medium goals. I was able to kind of go with the flow with things. I mean, I didn't know when I was 25 that I was going to move to Toronto to start a new life, but I'm glad that I kind of left the door open. I think I had an idea. I'm like, I may want to try something out like this.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's really smart. And I mean, it's impossible to know. I mean, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have known that I could start a blog and a side business that could bring, not guaranteed, but bring in, $3,000 a month for the last however many years. And that is what we use to kind of, our savings, our travel, our, all those extras that we do are because of that.
I know. I'm just so thankful for the internet sometimes. Like,
yes.
Man, can you imagine? Like, I don't think I can imagine my life without it.
No. And like I mentioned in my presentation, like I'm clueless. I don't know anything about the back end of the website or anything. Like I just moved host or changed hosting providers, and like I'm like, please do this for me because I have no idea.
I know.
And please don't break anything.
I know.
But I can write, and I think my skills would be in writing and kind of promoting, I guess.
Yeah. No, I think those are kind of the main skills. It's handy to have the technical side, but it's also great if you could just find someone to help you.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Rob, for spending some time with me and chatting with me. I really, really appreciate it. I had a great time.
My pleasure. Me too. Thank you.
And that was episode 36 of the Mo Money podcast. I am so grateful that I got the chance to talk to Robb. Make sure to check out the show notes for some more information about this episode and about Robb. You can check them out at jessicamorehouse.com/36. Also check out his awesome blog, Boomer and Echo.